Welcome back. This is attorney Tara Hutchinson with Pittsburgh Family Law Services. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the very first steps to pursue a step-parent adoption. Now, this is a situation where you have a child from a prior relationship and you have remarried, or maybe you're married for the first time. And unfortunately, the biological parent, the birth parent, maybe hasn't been involved in helping to raise your child or your children, or the birth parent has a lot of difficulties that even if they want to, they're not able to parent or provide care for your child. And you want your spouse to legally adopt your children so that they are just as much a parent, legally a parent, just as if they were biologically related. Obviously, in order to pursue an adoption, the step parent has to agree to this, has to believe that this is something they are prepared to do and something that they wish to pursue. And also, if your child is over the age of 12, that child has to actively consent and say that they agree to being adopted. There are very specific procedures for how to pursue a step-parent adoption in Pennsylvania. I would not be able to go through every single procedure in a short video because it would take hours to explain everything. But I'm just going to go through the very first steps. So these are going to be the first questions that a lawyer asks you when you contact them and say, I wish for my husband or my wife to adopt my children. So the first question is going to be, are you legally married? There are many arguments that could be made. We could spend hours debating whether the law should be this way or not. But in Pennsylvania, the law is very clear. For a step-parent adoption, where the step-parent is adopting a child and the birth parent, so the step-parent's spouse, is keeping their parental rights. In order for that to happen, you have to be legally married. Long-term committed partnerships do not count, even though you function and hold yourselves out exactly as you would if you were legally married. It does not count. You have to be married. There is no minimum duration. I have seen adoptions where a couple was only married for a few months. There is no minimum, but you do have to be married. I do get questions about this every so often. This does include same-sex couples. So if you have a same-sex marriage, if you and your spouse are the same sex, that is completely fine in Pennsylvania. There is absolutely no distinction. What matters is, do you have a marriage license? Again, we could debate back and forth about whether it should be this way or not, but this is the state of the current law in Pennsylvania. Sometimes people will ask me, well, the statute says that any individual can adopt, and doesn't that mean unmarried individuals? Yes, but if you are not married to the birth parent, procedurally what would have to happen is that both birth parents' parental rights would need to be terminated. That's obviously not what you want. You want to raise your child as a married couple, as an intact family. So absolutely, first very first step, you have to be married. Second question, do you have your criminal clearances completed? In Pennsylvania, every adopting parent has to complete several criminal clearances. These are the FBI fingerprinting, the Pennsylvania State Police, and the Pennsylvania child abuse clearances. You will also have to get child abuse and police clearances for any state where you resided in the last 5 years. So this can be a very extensive background check, depending on where you've lived. There are certain criminal offenses that will disqualify you from adopting a child. Primarily, these are going to focus on child abuse offenses, certain violent offenses, drug-related offenses. If you have convictions, they will preclude you from adopting a child in Pennsylvania. So it's very important that before we file anything in court, that you have those clearances done, and that you tell your lawyer if you have any criminal convictions. Third question, are you absolutely sure that you want to do this, that you want to take on this new relationship with your stepchild? Now, this sounds like a completely obvious question. In some ways, it probably sounds like an insulting question to ask, because obviously, if you're coming to a lawyer, of course, this is something that you want to do. But it's very important to remember that when you adopt a child, you are changing your legal relationship. You legally have the exact same status as a birth parent. What that means is that your child will be able to inherit from you. It also means that you would be able to inherit from your child. And it means that if your marriage later ended because of a divorce, you may be responsible for paying child support. As a step parent, if there is no legal adoption, you do not have that obligation. You don't have that duty, that legal duty to provide financial support. And of course, I have had these conversations with many clients. Every time I ask a client that question, they always say, absolutely, I understand that. I want that. I want that new duty, because that means there is no distinction between me and a birth parent. And that is completely fine. But whenever you are substantially changing your relationship, and adding on new obligations that you did not have previously, that is something an attorney is always going to want to make sure of, that you understand what those are, and that you still wish to proceed. And finally, do you have grounds to terminate the other parent's parental rights? In Pennsylvania, you cannot just terminate parental rights because you don't like the other parent. So if you have a situation where a parent is constantly late with custody exchanges, they don't respect notification periods, they constantly drop off late with no notice, that is very frustrating, and I completely get it. But in and of itself, those are not grounds to terminate somebody's parental rights. You need to, if the birth parent will not voluntarily consent to termination, you need to have grounds. The courts look at this very, very seriously, because when you terminate a birth parent's rights, you are turning them into a legal stranger. They have no more legal rights to see or to speak with their child. This is a very serious decision. It is an irreversible decision, and the judges want to know that if they're going to take such an extreme action, that there is a good reason to do so, because it truly is in your child's best interest. So you need to have grounds. I'll talk about the most common grounds that you see in step-parent adoptions in a separate video, but your attorney is going to want to go through what those grounds are and make sure that you have met them before proceeding with the termination of parental rights and with an adoption. So those are just the first 4 questions that an attorney will ask you. Obviously, in the context of a full consultation with parents who wish to pursue an adoption, it's much more detailed. It's much more involved. But these are just some things to expect. So these are questions that you can expect to be asked by a lawyer. Keep in mind, with adoptions, this is they have very specific procedures, and all of those have to be followed exactly to the letter. This is not something that you want to try doing on your own. So it's very important that you talk to a local family law attorney who has experience in adoptions before you proceed with any steps in the court process. As always, please remember that even though I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer. Every case is unique and specific to your situation. So if you have questions about how to proceed with an adoption, how to start an adoption, is this something that we can do, it's very important that you contact a local lawyer. So thank you for watching. Until next time, bye for now.